Hello, I'm looking into two PDFs that are 300 pages long each. Somewhere these PDFs contain requirements for application we need to create. So I need to perform business analysis and write requirements for software engineers. But the problem is we are very short on time. Essentially, every day that I take to read and analyze these PDFs, it's up a day for developers to implement the application. And there is a problem. I'm a project manager, not a business analyst. For sure, I have an idea how to perform business analysis. However, I don't have any dedicated training or even recent experience. At the same time, project management is my strength. I understand it's not feasible to analyze these two documents and write user stories in 5 short days on my own. So I need to come up with a plan, and we need to work smarter, not harder here. So divide and conquer is the most powerful approach in project management. So first of all, our app will have several standard components that many other apps on iPhone have. So for example, the component actually made of gold is the login screen. Lots of apps need a login screen, but you must recreate it from scratch every time for each new application you develop. And we also have settings screen, the part of the application where you can restore your purchases, log out, and change how your app looks and behaves on your iPhone. In our case, these two screens are pretty straightforward. I could have asked developers just to do their best and implement these screens without any written requirements. But I know my engineers, they don't like it. Moreover, we have to report to our customers, so we need requirements. That's why I'll delegate this part of writing requirements to quality assurance engineer. QAs are more inclined to create documentation, because writing test cases is very close to writing requirements. And here's a professional tip for you. Never throw new responsibilities on your team members. Instead, properly delegate them. Hi Jane, thanks for joining on short notice. I have an urgent assignment for you, and I believe you are the right person to do it. I need you to be a business analyst for me and help me write out some requirements. So here's what I want you to do. First of all, you need to do a quick research on apps that have a login screen and settings screen. Preferably search for apps with in-app purchases. It will help you to develop a vision for our app. We don't need to go over the board, try to stick to the native iOS look and feel as much as possible, and spend no more than 2 hours on this task. Second, after this meeting I'll send you several YouTube videos on how to write user stories, just as a refresher. Watch them and follow the advice from these videos, I vetted them. Then write user stories, write in Jira. I have already created placeholders for you. You need to focus on descriptions and acceptance criteria. And please don't stress about it too much, just try to do your best, because I will review and correct them if needed anyway. And overall, I'll be accountable in the long run. I'll talk to developers and customers if needed. Last but not least, let's set up a checkpoint tomorrow morning for a quick feedback session. Thank you so much, Jane, I really appreciate your help on this additional work. Done. All this took me about 3 hours to collect the materials and meet with Jane, but it allows us to work in parallel. And of course, I need to book some meetings to review and provide some feedback on her work. But what else can we do to speed up the business analysis here? Because it's obvious we need to do a lot of work. And in such moments, you need to review your toolbox. The more processes, tools and techniques you know in your domain, the more options you have. So, for example, in business analysis, I know just a few basic techniques. Documentation review is the most straightforward activity. Essentially, you need to read and analyze documentation you have at hand. There is also competitors analysis. We can Google a bit to see if similar products are on the market. But groups calculator is a very narrow niche. so I doubt there will be a lot of products we can review. But at the same time, we use this competitor analysis to come up with the requirements for login screen and settings screen. Now, interviews, focus groups, workshops, these are good options, but they require lots of time to organize. Or maybe not? And that's when it hits me. It might be a game changer for our business analysis effort here. So you see, at the start of the project, I did some analysis of this group's niche, and I found a pretty active forum out there with thriving community. They are very responsive and communicate a lot. So rather than trying to read through those PDFs end to end and hoping to find what matters, I'll ask real players about their biggest pain points. It may help us focus on specific parts of these PDFs. But for sure, we also need to narrow it down to the needs of our product, so we need to drive these interviews in the right direction. And once again, I'll look in my project management toolbox. For example, I know about Delphy technique. It's a great way to collect unbiased feedback from the experts. I won't go into all details of the Delphy technique right now because I have a dedicated video, so instead I'll leave you a link in the description. And by the way, do you find this video helpful? If yes, please hit the like button right now, because it's a great indication that I need to create more videos to share my practical experience with you. So here's the idea. I'll create a thread on the group's forum asking for help. I'll be transparent that we are working on developing an application for groups community. And I need insights from people who actually play groups on weekly or daily basis. Now the challenge is to make it as frictionless as possible. So first I'll create an account in Calendar, then I'll integrate it with Zoom and with my Google Calendar. Then I can set up time slots when people can join a meeting with me, so people can choose the best time that suits them and I'm available for an appointment. And by the way, Calendar doesn't sponsor this video, it's just an excellent service to avoid back and forth with people on forum to schedule a meeting. And it's a great example how we IT project managers work smarter, not harder. And now I need to come up with a list of questions, so following Delphy technique, I'll ask about 10 people the same set of questions. Then based on their response, I may consider adjusting them. I'll start with the following. What in-game calculations are the hardest to make on the fly during the game? Out of those calculations, can you name which one you encountered the most during one game? Can you point me to the correct chapter in the book that describes these rules? What one feature would be the most valuable for you if I could create any app that speeds up the group's calculations? Okay, it took me the rest of the day to set up Calendar, come up with questions and attend to all the other things I have as a project manager right now. I'll publish this request on the forum and hopefully I'll have a meeting or two tomorrow with real groups players. Let me step back from our imaginary project management example and share something important from my real-world experience. Right now it may feel like all these techniques I apply for the groups calculator on YouTube may work only for this specific case. However, it works the same way across the whole IT industry. First of all, you need to read tons of documentation to understand business logic you are trying to implement in your product or service. Or you need to understand the capabilities of the technology you want to integrate with. You will definitely talk a lot with subject matter experts. You'll interview them one-on-one or gather them in a meeting, you'll send them a survey or a questionnaire. All of these happen in the real world the same way. Of course, it may have a different form or shape, and in most cases it's more straightforward to find an SME inside your organization. But overall, the approaches, the strategies, the techniques are all the same. Okay, let's get back to our imaginary world. Oh my god, I woke up the next day and my calendar was full of meetings with GURPS players from the forum. So I've spent the whole day talking to different people and asking the same questions. I had 11 meetings and the results are amazing. Here's what I learned. Delana, our product owner, was partially correct. People do need a calculator to speed up the main combat calculations. However, there are three components to it. There is this melee or hand-to-hand combat calculations. They are relatively simple, not too many options there. But there is also range combat. It's when players try to shoot someone with an arrow or firearms, and that's when I learned that numerous additional rule books expand the basic rule. So from one side we narrowed down our analysis to just a few chapters of the initial PDFs we received. But we also need to analyze other books with additional rules. Also, I learned, for example, about these grappling special rules. Everyone hates them because they are too complicated to keep in mind. But most players try to avoid or simplify those rules. That's why my initial feeling is that grappling rules won't make into the first version of the app, but ranged attacks calculation is a must-have. And yes, the explosion is another area that players find hard to calculate on the fly, and lots of them named it as the #1 feature for the application. Again, the daily errands and meetings took the rest of the day. Tomorrow I have more meetings with GURPS players. But I also want to block some time to read through the rules. But at this moment I don't want to write any user stories yet. Instead, I capture extensive notes of what players tell me, and that brings us to the simplest requirement structure that every IT project manager needs to understand. So at the top there is a business need. In our case, it's a software application for iPhone that will help players to speed up the calculations during the game. This is what business or product owners told me. But what should this app do or be capable of from user perspective? In our case, we learned that we need to speed up calculations during range combat and explosions. On top of that, our product owners want to make money from the app, so they want to add a subscription fee to use the app. So all of that is our stakeholder requirements, and do notice that these requirements come from different groups of stakeholders. Now, the user stories describe the solution or technical requirements. That will be our next step. And that's why I recommend you watch the next video in this series to learn how I transform the rules I learned from the PDFs into actual user stories for my development team. Or you can watch the full project management tutorial, so just click one of these videos and I'll talk to you there.